Unfortunately, Ben couldn't make it today, so you have me. I'm Seamus. My name's Seamus Lennon. I'm a solutions engineer with Threatlocker in the EMEA team. And today, what I'd like to introduce why companies should be adopting a zero trust architecture. Okay, so if we start off with, we'll start at the basics. Okay, we'll talk about software. Software is everywhere. We use it every day. It's plain and simple. It's code that's been created, developed, and executed. Typically, when you see what we use for software, everyday uses, Microsoft Office, Google Chrome, Adobe, Dropbox, sharing file tools. We use it every single day, and we use it everywhere as well. So software at the moment, it's used in operating theatres. Airlines use it. You know, ambulance tracking services, even rockets have software built in them. To say that the possibilities of using software are probably endless, you know. And when it comes to software, and because of the possibilities of it, we're saying it can be used anywhere at all. However, what differentiates good software and bad software? Very little. All it is code. Code that whether it runs or doesn't run, the outcome is what makes it good or bad. Okay? But at the end of the day, when you think about it, malware is software. That's all it is. It's just a line of code. And depending on what side of the fence you're on, it's whether it's good or whether it's bad. So if you talk about malware, and particularly about ransomware, how it actually evolved. Years ago when it typically started, malware used to just, you know, it'd pop up as something on your screen. It pop-ups like ad blockers now that we have just popping up. It used to say silly stuff about Bill Gates actually on your screen in the beginning, okay? But as we say, like when it comes to malware and the possibilities of it, it's very easy for malware to be infecting any machine at all, okay? So as I said, the very beginning, we had silly pop-ups like this on your screen. These are in the early days. It sort of evolved then from just single pop-ups. It evolved into what we call and know now as ransomware. So when we talk about ransomware, we talk about, you know, where it came from, when it started. So the very first ransomware that is documented is actually called the AIDS Trojan. Now this is around the same time of when it evolved, which was in 1989, believe it or not. So this ransomware was designed to infect and encrypt your files on your drive after 90 reboots of your machine. Now, this is way before we had bitcoins and way before we had payments of it. So in order to actually get this ransomware off your machine, you'd have to send $189 to a PO box in Panama. So, which at the time was, you know, it was new at the time, but it was tracked down. So the original developer at the time, because we didn't have hackers or anything at the time, a guy called Joseph Pep, he was tracked down, he was arrested for one of the very first known ransomwares that we have. That sort of evolved. So ransomware in the beginning was, it'd infect the machine, one machine would get infected. That sort of strategy then changed. And then we moved on to what we call WannaCry. So WannaCry was one of our first ransomwares that was able to actually infect our networks. It was able to jump from one machine onto another, encrypting all of our data, okay? But we moved on from that. All that was an encryption. And that's it. You had a ransom to pay, you paid it, or else you just restore from your backup. We then moved on and evolved into a different sort of ransomware as we know today. If we have a look at the types of ransomware we have now, Conti V3, okay? So Conti V3 is one of these ransomwares that has affected a lot of people. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm Irish. So we have a health system in Ireland, just like the NHS, called the HSE. And in May 2021, just when we were going into pandemic, the HSE was hit with the Conti virus ransomware. Okay, what it did was it took down all of the systems. It used Cobalt strikes through PowerShell to delete all the shadow copies, encrypt every single machine over the networks. Imagine 2 months into a pandemic, all of the staff resorted to pen and paper. All of the systems completely shut down. No systems whatsoever. All patients' appointments were cancelled. It took them 3 months just to get the primary systems back up. Still to this day, they're not fully back up. The estimated cost of that is nearly 500 million. Now, the problem with that is that not only have they infected all their machines, they have taken some data. But there's no guarantee of ever getting that data back. And that's how ransomware has evolved these days. Not only will they encrypt your environment, they will steal your data and hold you to ransom for that actual data. Okay? Now, there's no guarantee when you pay that it's actually going to be paid. So if you look at this particular graph here, okay, what this actually is demonstrating is, I just give you the example of the HSE in Ireland, which is a big enough organisation. But the trend now is, it's not to go after the big companies. If you look at 2/3 of this graph of companies that have ransomware attacks are all of employees of less than 1,000. So it's the smaller and the medium businesses, because their data is so valuable to them that with the ransomware, they're going to attack them very easily. Okay? But instead of them just targeting individuals, what they will do is they'll use other tools now. Okay? So when they're attacking people, and particularly companies, they'll use all the tools that they have available to them. Okay? So as you can see here, like in terms of the actual ransom, you know, there is no guarantee on your data being retrieved. That's the fact. So whether you pay it or not, it remains irrelevant. Okay? So here's how threat actors are innovating. Instead of going after the individual companies, what are they doing? They're going after the tools that manage those companies' environments. They're using the tools available to them. So any companies out there that use remote management tools, they'll attack them. We've seen this already. You know, there has been attacks with using the likes of SolarWinds and Kaseya to infect individual machines, getting the remote management tools to do the work for them. And it's very easy. You know, the introduction of what they call rubber duckies now, which is basically USB devices which act as a keyboard on your machine. When it's plugged into the machine, it executes scripts, but it doesn't actually show that it's executing scripts. They've actually evolved that rubber ducky onto what they call OMG cables, which just look like a normal USB charging cable. And they can connect to the machine wirelessly now and execute code on the fly. They can just sit outside, connect to it, and execute that code. So these are the types of vulnerabilities that we're dealing with today. So we are evolving, okay? And the way they evolve is they use their tools to infect your machines, but they don't always have to, okay? What they've actually done now is they're using the tools that are available to them on your machine. So the likes of PowerShell, which is included in every single Windows operating system, is being used. They can use that. They can install and run ransomware without it actually being detected. You can actually do this if you look up the Lobas project. You will see that you can actually run ransomware without actually installing anything. It runs in actual memory. So you're not downloading or installing anything, so your antivirus isn't going to actually pick up on any files. Okay? So how can we solve this problem of ransomware? What do we do? This is what we currently do. Antivirus, threat hunting, scanning, next-gen antivirus. These are all what we do currently. We're scanning for those bad files in our environment. However, we're scanning on a known list of what we know is good and what we know is bad. Unfortunately, we cannot scan for zero-day attacks where none of these antivirus companies know about this attack or this file. So if they don't know whether the file is good or bad, they can't actually stop it from running. So this is just not actually working when we go forward. It's just not. So how do we stop it? Very easy. There's solutions. The solutions are default deny. Basically, deny everything that is not trusted within your environment. I'd like to introduce what we call the security triangle. And on the left of the triangle is what we have traditionally. So if somebody ever has, an attack, what they tend to do is we'll increase what's on the left-hand side. Our antivirus, our EDRs, our AI scanning, our threat scanning. And that's where most people concentrate, and most companies concentrate on. At the bottom, we have our security awareness training. Now, you can do as much security awareness training as you like, but you ain't going to stop Doris and accounts from clicking on those links that she's just not supposed to be clicking on. You can't. On the right-hand side is where we come in, which is called controls. Now, one of the controls I have on the right-hand side here is dual-factor authentication. It's possibly the only solution to stop a phishing attack. With multi-factor authentication, even if Doris in accounts clicks on the links, puts in our credentials, with dual-factor authentication, you're still preventing access to your systems. Okay? Where we come in the right-hand side of the controls is that we're going to deny what can and cannot run. So we're going to put in the likes of application whitelisting, storage controls, elevation controls. We're just going to prevent those applications or executable processes that we do not want running in our environment from running. Okay? So our motto is zero trust, least privilege. And the reason why we say this is every single application that you run on your environment has the exact same access to your data that you have as a user. Every single application. So when we adopt this zero trust, we're about locking down what applications have access to your data, what applications can do with their data, and what applications can interact with other applications. So we do this on a number of ways. Application whitelisting. It's very simple. We create a list of applications that we're going to allow to run in our environment, and we're going to deny everything else. It's basically that simple. So we also have ring fencing. Okay? So what ring fencing means is we're going to further restrict those applications that we have allowed to run. So, for example, Microsoft Office calling PowerShell. Microsoft Office doesn't need to run with PowerShell. It doesn't need access to PowerShell. But this is the most common way of ransomware getting in. It's through those Office attachments that call PowerShell to download payloads into your environment. So we're going to deny access to that. We're going to allow the applications we want to run in our environment and just control what they can and cannot do. Again, PowerShell. PowerShell has access to all of your files in your environment. It can be used to exfiltrate all of your data. If an attacker does get in, that infiltrator can use PowerShell to upload all of your data anywhere they like. So we're going to stop PowerShell from accessing your data and just control what it can and cannot do. Storage control. Storage control is around putting policies around the data that we actually trust and know, and allowing only the applications access that data. As I said earlier, all applications have the very same access to your storage and your data that you as a user have. So let's restrict what applications have access to the data. To give you an example of that, you may have your backup stored in some storage location within your environment. Do you want every application in your environment accessing that data? No. Do you want every user accessing that data? No. Let's restrict that down just so your backup solution can access that data and that data alone. Which means if there was an infiltrator in there and they tried to use any process to access that data, well, we're going to block and deny access to that data. We're coming from a point of least privilege to everything in our environment. Okay. So with the control of storage, we can actually just lock it down to the applications we want. Okay. Finally, elevation control. Elevation control is about removing the user's need to have local admin access on endpoints. Now, there may be applications out there that require admin access, but let's do it in a safe way. Let's only give those users administrative privileges just to those applications without giving them administrative credentials, and locking down that application so it can run securely without interacting with any other application. So we're just going to lock down our environment. Here's a nice chat that I'd just like to put up here. It is how ransomware has evolved. So gone are the days of an individual hacker sitting in a room, connecting to your machine, encrypting your data. This is actually a full software support solution. They actually have an online web help to help you out when you get infected. You can see here that they're actually giving you tips on how to stop this from happening again. Ransomware nowadays is actually as a service. You can purchase ransomware as a service. No longer do you need to know code. You can just purchase it off the internet. This is how things have changed. So this is why we need to change. So why not let's just change the paradigm of endpoint security. So that is me, nice, quick and easy.
Seamus, thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Sorry, I got your name wrong at the beginning.
That's no problem at all.